Okay, so I was planning to do my video pretty soon here. Whoops. My video talking about another master node. But I decided before that I'd write something up to respond to this article here by Mike Adams. If you're not familiar with who Mike Adams is, his nickname is the Health Ranger. He's a guy who blogs regularly about health-related stuff, natural ways to cure diseases, treat conditions, staying healthy. He's like anti-vaccine, anti-GMO, and other stuff like that. Pro-organic. He posts a lot at naturalnews.com. This is actually one of my favorite websites. Just saying, I myself, I'm like a health nut type person or whatever. So before I go any further, I just want to make it clear that this isn't anything. Make sure I get my mic here correct. This isn't anything against Mike Adams personally. Like, I don't want people to think that I'm bashing Mike Adams or I don't like him, whatever. Like, I like Mike Adams. I'm a big fan of the guy. I think he's a good guy, or at least I think he says good information. I agree with most of the stuff he says, just he's very anti-Bitcoin, and he tends to post these really scathing Bitcoin articles, and I commented one of them before, and this time I decided to make a video just to make my thoughts known exactly about this as to why I think he's incorrect. And I apologize if I sound funny. After my allergies, I seem to be fighting a cold and allergies at the same time, so go figure. So anyway, I want to go on this. So, he posts this article and he's like, "Oh, Bitcoin cultist panic as China outlaws Bitcoin exchanges. Price plummets 25%. People shocked to discover government can destroy cryptocurrencies." Then he goes on here to call Bitcoin cultists, and saying that they believe that it's a perpetual money supply. It can bypass the laws of economic reality, and governments can shut it down there and destroy the value of it. Uh, so I have a problem with this for a couple of reasons. First of all, is just the fact that every time there's any kind of like correction or bounce in the market or whatever, people automatically go to this panic mode, and they just automatically start going like, "Oh, see, this is the proof. Bitcoin's a scam. The price is going, it's being destroyed." And I guess my problem with that is if you're going to call something a scam every time the price drops, to me that shows that you're uneducated about the way economics work and the way that the value of things work. Everything fluctuates up and down in price. He posted this a couple of days ago when Bitcoin had there news from the market caused a sudden plunge in the price of Bitcoin, and I think we plunged down to like, I don't know, it was 2,900 or something like that. Yeah, it was a lot. Or maybe it's right here. Yeah, Bitcoin dropped down to like 2,900 for a brief minute there. Now it's recovered back to about 3,600. In fact, the entire market took a hit, and the crypto market lost several $billions. It hasn't regained all of it, but it's already gained a good portion of it just a couple of days later. So that's the first thing that annoys me. Yeah, you see it says Bitcoin surges more than 35% as cryptocurrencies recover. So yeah, a couple of days ago we took a huge hit. A few days later, the market's basically recovered most of what was lost. So that's my biggest thing, is that every single time something happens to drive down the price of Bitcoin, people start calling it a scam and all this other stuff. And it's like, no, it's not a scam. It's like anything else. Does every time the stock market drop, or the price of gold drops, or the price of silver drops, are those scams? Are those no good? Especially stocks, because again, a stock is something that doesn't physically exist, but you're still investing in the value of it. So I don't know. I just don't really care for that line of thinking. It seems almost ignorant. Like, don't get me wrong, I understand that Mike Adams and other people like him, they prefer tangible assets you can hold, like gold and silver. I get it, that's fine, but you don't need to go bashing cryptocurrencies like that. He's saying governments can regulate Bitcoin out of existence. Well, yes and no. I mean, that's really a loaded thing to say. Tomorrow, if the Chinese government or U.S. government want to ban cryptocurrency altogether, would that cause a lot of issues for the crypto markets? Yeah, I would say it would. Now could they simply pass regulations to make it disappear? Probably not. In fact, it would probably be a lot harder to, ban it out of existence than it would, say, gold or silver, You know, because he seems to forget how all the gold was confiscated by people when they took the dollar off the gold standard, you know, however many years ago. So, you know, yes, you can pass regulations to impact Bitcoin, but that's with anything. You know, I don't believe any of the core people behind Bitcoin or any high level educated Bitcoin investors would ever say, oh, Bitcoin is simply impossible to regulate. You can regulate anything, or you can try to regulate anything. Now, you can try being the keyword. How successful you're going to be is another thing entirely. So then he goes on to talk about how, the Bitcoin exchanges are shutting down. Like actually, the first one to shut down in China is like is the oldest Bitcoin exchange in the world. I mean, I get it, but again, we don't know what's going to happen. I mean, the market's already largely recovered even with this news. I don't think China's going to ban cryptocurrencies forever. I think this is a temporary thing while they put new, regulations in place. Just because China is very strict like that. It could go either way, though. We'll see what happens. Maybe they'll make the ban permanent, maybe they won't. And either way, the market's going to continue on without them. I mean, that's a fact. Even with the two largest Chinese exchanges shut down, Bitcoin price is recovering. So, people need to relax there. And then, they're going on about, he's trying to talk about more myths about Bitcoin. Oh, yeah, and then there's some thing here where this guy, I don't know, that's this one. They blast John McAfee, talking about why John McAfee's logic actually proves Bitcoin is a fraud. Let's see here. So basically, John McAfee pointed out how, he mines Bitcoin. They create Bitcoins and it costs, thousands of dollars to create one Bitcoin now, while it costs nothing to create a US dollar. So, he points out which one do you think is really a fraud at this point? And then this article goes on to say that John McAfee's logic doesn't make any sense. Let me see here. Blah, blah, blah. A bunch of nonsense here. Yeah, so they're saying that, the scaling complexity of Bitcoin is an artificial work algorithm, and that if Bitcoin's value drops below $1,000 to mine it, now becomes unprofitable, which should render a large part of the entire Bitcoin infrastructure obsolete. I I don't know where to even start with this, because again, this just tells me that you don't understand the topic you're talking about. And that's what really bothers me about this most of all, is that this is clearly written by someone who's not educated about cryptocurrency. Like if you understand cryptocurrency, if you're educated about it, if you've done your research, if you've done your homework, and you understand things like how the mining system works, how the blockchain works, how the difficulty algorithm works, and you can explain to me logically, then I'm going to be willing to listen. But when you say a blanket statement like this, it just, to me, it kind of shows your ignorance there, that you don't really know what you're talking about. Now, yes, if the price of Bitcoin dropped below $1,000, mining would become unprofitable. Yeah, but again, that's true for anything. I mean, if something suddenly happened to tank the value of gold or silver, companies probably would stop mining those and start mining something else that is more profitable, like some other precious metal or mineral or diamonds or anything. So you can't simply say, well, if the value drops too low, it'll become unprofitable mine and nobody will mine it, so that proves it's fake. It really doesn't. That's, simple supply and demand laws. That applies to anything. Not to mention, they clearly also don't understand that Bitcoin is an adjusting network. And I don't even know if I'd really call this an artificial work algorithm. The network scales difficulty according to how much mining power is being directed to it, to make sure everything is being mined, in a consistent manner, and that there's scaling difficulty, making it harder to mine Bitcoin so that there's less and less of it to increase the value. Just like anything else, there's value because of supply and demand laws. I mean, if suddenly everybody, not everybody, but if most people stopped mining Bitcoin, the network would adjust the difficulty, drop it down significantly, and then people would be able to mine it more easily, increasing the value of it. It's the same thing that happened with Bitcoin Cash. Like, when Bitcoin Cash first went live, it had the same difficulty as Bitcoin, but a lot less mining power. So people were actually mining it at a loss for a little while there until the network saw that there's not nearly enough mining power to mine Bitcoin Cash efficiently and dropped the difficulty, and it became profitable to start mining. In fact, at one point there, it was actually more profitable to mine Bitcoin Cash opposed to Bitcoin for a little while. And here's another thing he says, also the 21 million coin limit that's rapidly being approached. Again, not really true at all. I mean, a large portion of the Bitcoin supply has been mined. This is true, but the difficulty has scaled significantly. So the number of coins being mined is slowing down significantly and halves about every 4 years. I mean, I haven't looked into a lot, but if you just do a quick Google search, they all explain there's 21 million coins total based on current, whatever it's expected to be mined by between the year 2110 and 2140. So, yeah, that's not rapidly at all. In fact, by the time we mine all Bitcoin, we'll probably have replaced it with something else that falls in line with more advanced computer technology. So, good research there, guys. I found that within 5 seconds of Googling. Uh, so what is here? I don't know. Just a bunch of other nonsense, really. Let's see, abundance coin. Yeah, they're somehow saying that, having lower supply is like goes against the supply of or the laws of economics, which again I don't fully understand because everything comes to supply and demand. That's why gold has value to it because there's a limited supply and you can't just create it out of thin air. I don't know. This seems like a very poorly put together article. You know, like they didn't really give it a lot of thought here. You know, yeah, they're saying it consumes enormous resources. Yeah, and that's true. It does consume enormous resources. But, I mean, again, this coin was created 8 years ago. I don't think whatever his name was, Satoshi, whatever, could exactly look into a crystal ball and see into the future and plan ahead for what would have been done for Bitcoin. Maybe if he knew that Bitcoin has become such a resource hog in the future, he would have changed the design. Maybe he wouldn't have. Who really knows? But there are cryptocurrencies that do, address this fact that it's become too costly in the way of resources to mine cryptocurrency. Maybe even one day Bitcoin will be changed to address this. Other currencies already have, though. So, yeah, I don't know. They just go on and on here, and it's just like I said, they're not really. It just feels like they haven't really done any research here. So, yeah, I completely agree. Government central banks are gunning for Bitcoin, false flag, terrorist attacks. These days, who knows? I see all that as entirely possible, and yes, they've tried to claim that only criminals and terrorists use Bitcoin, which we all know is complete nonsense there. But yeah, he just goes on, they just keep going on about this stuff. And then there's another one. They're saying Bitcoin isn't anonymous, and there's this article talking about why Bitcoin isn't truly anonymous. But I guess what I really find funny about this is in the first breath, like the very beginning, it's talking about, evidence that Bitcoin isn't anonymous, and then it says, but most of this tracking is done on third-party websites and via other means aside from Bitcoin to track the person. It's like, okay, so it's not really that Bitcoin's not anonymous, it's that you're tracked on the internet in other ways, for one thing. I mean, that's aside from the point, though. I guess the real point I should make is Bitcoin is not an anonymous cryptocurrency. That was never the idea behind it. That's not the point of it. If you ask anyone who knows about Bitcoin or the Bitcoin core developers or anything like that, that will be one of the first things they'll say is, no, Bitcoin is not meant to be anonymous. That's why there is a public ledger that literally records every transaction. If it was meant to be anonymous, you wouldn't record every transaction and make it so anyone in the world can look up that transaction, Now, you can be anonymous with Bitcoin, clearly, because plenty of people have gotten away with heists using Bitcoin. Like some of those people that have, recently stolen money from ICOs. I remember there was some article a few weeks or a few months back, they admitted, like blockchain experts admitted that once that guy started, obviously the guy knew what he was doing. They couldn't track him by IP or anything. And once he started running his Bitcoin through Bitcoin mixing services, it would be nearly impossible to track him in the long run. So, again, this just seems very ignorant because the biggest thing is they're saying it's not anonymous. It wasn't meant to be anonymous. Now, if you know what you're doing, yeah, you can keep things anonymous while using Bitcoin, but it'd probably be more practical to use something that's meant to better hide you, like Zcash or Monero, like they mentioned. So, I don't know. I don't really care for that either. And then he just goes on here. He talks about how he's a prominent libertarian leaning analyst, denouncing Bitcoin as a Ponzi scheme. And again, I don't like that. He's calling it a digital fiat currency backed by nothing. Again, I don't like that, for a lot of stuff. They're like, one, look at the definition of a Ponzi scheme: a form of fraud in which belief of the success of a non-existent enterprise is fostered by the payment of quick returns to the first investors for money invested by later investors. Well, Bitcoin doesn't fit, it doesn't fit that description at all because no one's taking the money from early investors to give to later investors to perpetuate the value of Bitcoin. And Bitcoin is not an investment vehicle, it's a digital currency. Now, because of the limited supply, some people do use it as a platform for investing, but nobody who mines Bitcoin or anything like that, that's not the idea behind it. They don't mine it and say, oh, invest in this and you'll become rich quick. No. Anyone who seriously does any kind of trading or investing in Bitcoin will tell you that. And again, it just doesn't fit the idea of a Ponzi scheme. I mean, it's just two totally different things. I mean, they're trying to compare it to, like, one of those multi-level pyramid marketing schemes where it's like, oh, if you get on this and get your friends in, you double or triple your returns there. That's not the idea with Bitcoin at all. The idea is it's a digital currency for making payments between people anywhere in the world, basically, without having to go through third parties or anything else like that. So, yeah, it was just this whole long thing here. And, yeah, like I said, I'm just not a big fan of this. And there's mixed thoughts in the article, in the comments here. Some people agree with it. Yeah, like this guy, he explains, I don't understand how people get hysterical in a dip. Some people agree with Mike. Some people think that, he's wrong. Some people want to clarify. It's just a lot of different opinions there. But again, that's how I feel about it. I mean, Bitcoin is a volatile thing to use as an investment. Anyone who invests in Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies know this. You're going to see these highs and lows and these ups and downs. If you're going to panic or call Bitcoin a scam, like every single time the price drops, probably shouldn't be in it. You should probably stick with something safer. But, again, all these points are, being made by people who clearly don't understand. Yeah, and like here's another thing talking about, just like I said, Bitcoin's a peer-to-peer open source currency. There's no central entity to lead such a scheme. Yeah, again, I just feel I have nothing against Mike, or people in general who don't want to invest in Bitcoin. Like, I was on YouTube recently and I saw some video from some guy who gives investment tips and advice, and his thing he had his reasons about why he didn't exactly see the value in Bitcoin, but his big thing was, at the end of the day, was he was like, what, I don't understand Bitcoin enough to competently invest in it, and it's very volatile, and I don't personally invest in high risk volatile things. And I'm like, what, that's fine. That's a completely acceptable answer to me. If you want to say, hey, I get the idea behind this, but I don't understand it enough that I don't feel confident enough, like expert enough to invest in it, I can completely accept that. But, to put up stuff like this and this, saying all this stuff when it's clear, like, all right, you need to do your homework. You haven't done your research, and you're trying to tell us all this stuff, and it's very inaccurate information, or it's only part of the truth there, that that's not appreciated, and you're just creating fear where there's no need for it. Anyway, like I said, Bitcoin's already done its started its recovery there. As for what's going to happen long term with this, who knows? I mean, I think all exchanges are expected to shut down in China by the end of this month, so we could see more fluctuations. Maybe it'll just start going up again, maybe down. It's hard to say. I mean, China makes up about 20% of all the crypto Bitcoin trading in the world, so they actually make up a smaller portion. Japan, South Korea, and the U.S. make up the larger portions of it. So, who knows what we might see in the long term or short term. We might see another dip. We might just keep seeing rises. It could go either way. But, none of this proves that Bitcoin is a scam. Like I said, I like Mike Adams. I just feel like this information is very misleading and very inaccurate here. So anyway, I hope you enjoy this video and find it informative. If you have any questions, thoughts, or comments, feel free to go ahead and let me know below. And I'll be coming with my next video soon.